Hi ClimateLab community, I'm Fernando Sori. On behalf of the Universidad de Lorraine and Pontificia Universidad Católica do Paraná, I would like to thank you for engaging to the ClimateLab Incubation Program, or CLIP as we call it. As working package leaders, we are proud to finally launch this program and share with you all the material that we have been working on during this past month. Starting with this video, you're going to follow a series of audiovisual content and interactive workshops that we specifically designed for you, ClimateLab teams. Innovation labs and spaces, social innovation, applying living lab methods to social challenges are some of the topics that we will develop over the course of this program. However, we felt it was important to begin with the main reason and motivation that bring us all together in this project, the mitigation and adaptation to climate change. In this sense, Professors Paola Alfaro from TU Berlin University and Universidade de Genova and Harry Bollmann from Universidad Católica do Paraná have prepared a conversation around the main aspects of climate change. Based on their experiences at their universities and the projects they have been involved in, Paola and Harry discuss climate change through different facets, such as climate injustice, social infrastructure, governance, and community. We believe this is a discussion that all ClimateLab teams should have, so we invite you to watch this video and take full value of this program for your lab. I leave you with Paola and Harry.
Speaking about climate change, our planet is far too heterogeneous and environmentally complex. Part of the planet seems to be cooling, as you can see in the blue part of the image, and part of it seems to be heating up in red. So depending on the local you are and the point of view that this phenomenon is observed, theories for this or that effect appear. In any case, it seems undeniable that we are living in a period of climate crisis, where the phenomena is getting worse year by year. The climate extremes are getting more and more intense, heavy rains causing floods, prolonging droughts causing fires, and heat causing environmental imbalance. And the consequences of these changes are also different in each part of the planet. Even here in Brazil, which is a country of continental size, different consequences are expected within our territory, such as the increase in the duration and frequency of droughts in the northeast, and the intensification on the heavy rains in the south, where is located our ClimateLab. This reading on what are the consequences of climate change on the territory that is expected to be the target area for the labs should be for sure the first step to follow.
I think it's also the idea why we are in this program, right? It's this conviction that we need to work from a, let's say, a perspective that we incorporate people. And I'm an architect, and I also do urban studies, and I do consultancy, but I work also in the urban field. And for me, I think this was one of the biggest learning after entering into teaching in the university and starting my PhD, that there is this kind of dimension of people, people who will be using the buildings, but also will be developing with their position and with their thoughts and their wishes, but also with their abilities, they will shape the cities, right? And this is why, for me, when I started to work on the issues of urban development, I entered very much into this perspective to have a human-centered perspective on things, right? And I very much like this this quote that Lina Bobardi did once already about a building in Brazil, right? It is this sex building, you know this, right? It's Fábrica de Pompeii. There she said, the most important thing is not to know how to build well, but understand how the most of the people live. We had an experiment here, and I think this is coining very much that what I believe is so important about in what we are doing here in this program, right? On one hand, to understand, as you are also saying, we have here an experiment, and that's a social experiment, and in the component of applied research and also in the component to develop this urban labs related with climate change. For me, it's really quite interesting to be part of this program. And if I would say one thing, I think what attracts me more on this aspect of climate change, because I mean, the entire discussion about climate change is going on since a while. But what I believe is so important in our program is that we are putting this mindset together of resilience, to say that resilience is not only a technical or a technological solution. We need also a social undertaken, and we need an infrastructure, let's say a systemic approach on something. So therefore, I think if we put this together, this is what for me is so interesting to understand how does it works. And for example, we started already to discuss these important topics here together, right? That on one hand, of course, the challenge of climate change is systematic, right? It's a systemic approach in terms of when we talk about the idea of climate injustice, then we understand very quick that we are all interrelated with each other, and we are also part of the problem, but also should be part of the solution, I would say. And therefore, I find this very important to understand this systemic approach which is there. And also what you are saying, and I am what your experience is, but also mine experience is that in any case, we need to incorporate different parts of the society, because as I also once wrote, that each part has its knowledge, right? So we cannot go for uniform solutions. We also have to understand how we locally bring them down, and with that also get the power and also the force to be able to implement them.
Yeah, interesting, Paula. This view that you mentioned, that the climate change is not infrastructure, but we got to work with people and with social innovation. That's a question that I've made to myself in the last few months, how climate change and social innovation can collaborate, right? If you look to the reports from International Panel of Climate Change, but let me ask you a question, Paul, about your urban planner side of your formation, right? I have teaching environmental planning at Catholic University in the last 20 years, but I did it not for students, undergraduate students of architecture, but for civil engineers and environmental engineers. I think that working with environmental planning in terms of urbanism by the School of Architecture, it's something that they normally do it in your undergrad courses, right? But it's completely new for civil engineers and for environmental engineers. And so we have been working with the blue-green infrastructures as example to face of kind of infrastructures to face the climate change. because the use of blue-green infrastructures can reduce the effects of floods, of the rivers in urban environment, can improve the quality of the river waters, can store these waters, increasing its local availability. In addition, the BGIs can reduce the air temperatures and bring environmental functions like shelter of flora and fauna diversity and so on. But talking about this infrastructures, Curitiba is well known as a city of many parks. We have lots of parks here, and it has a social function, and so lots of environmental functions too. And we see when we have been measuring what we call the heat island over Curitiba, and where do we have a park? We have the temperature drops down up to 7 degrees, yes. Right? Yeah. So it's a very interesting thing to do to face this climate change effects, right? Mm. So how do you see that we can, I don't know if not to enforce this, not to students of architecture and urban planning, but for civil engineers, for all careers that use the city like your work, like civil engineers, environmental engineers, and so on. I don't know if the schools in Europe or other countries are thinking about to expand this concept of facing climate change effects in your graduation courses, for instance.
I mean, this is an experience that I made already in Ecuador at the Habitat 3 conference. This was 2016 already, where you learned very quickly that the architects and the urban designers, but also let's say the urban planners, they have something which you always teach them, which is to make a design, right? To design something. It means that and in this purpose of designing, I think that there is a lot of methodological space to develop something which is very needed when we are talking about climate change education for the built environment disciplines. On one hand, it is to understand, firstly, that you have to bring the problem of climate change physically down, right? So that you understand, for example, that you need cooling points. You understand that the problems of let's say water shortage, it's related somewhere, let's say in the mountains, even outside, right? And it comes because of a systemic problem. It is also being part of the city itself. You have to take care of that. You also, when strong water is raining, you have to somehow deal with that. It's something which I think in the idea that you design something, that you are aware that you have a problem which is not unilateral. It needs to be somehow faced from different parts. And this is what we are always teaching students in urban design courses, right? That you don't build your city only by one discipline, right? You do this by a lot of disciplines, and you have to have agreements, right? And everybody needs to know its competences, but also have a greater picture of something. I would say there is something in my experience and from what I have worked with students, there's something that they very quickly understand this, because this is part of our architecture discipline, that always to make a building, to develop a city is never something from one discipline. It's always a multilateral and to agree, right? To be able to transmit plans, to incorporate people, to convince also that you're on a proper way, and you need experience. And this experience is done also in a bigger, let's say, planning table.